And we're back. Aircraft Sparky, let me take a moment to thank you for coming on such short notice to moderate this debate. Really appreciate it. And of course, Rob Noerr, I'm sure that this is going to be a fun, a fun debate to say the least. I will, of course, as the challenger to the evil and despicable Trump supporter, I will give the first opening statement. I think that that's only fair. I'm sure that if I was on his channel, he would just mute me the entire time because, like a typical Trump supporting scumbag, they don't want to actually hear what reasonable high IQ Democrats have to say. Get your clips ready, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure this will be the most clippable opening statement of the entire year, taken out of context, possibly for the rest of my life. With that, Aircraft Sparky, can you take a second, introduce yourself as a moderator, tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yes, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to actually moderate this debate. I know it was on short notice. I'm just glad I could step up and help one of the largest growing debate platforms on the YouTubes, on the internets, the Crucible. I'm Aircraft Sparky. I do political commentary, some slapstick comedy here and there, mostly at my own expense. I do shows on Mondays and Wednesday nights every week at 9 p.m. Central. That's 10 p.m. for you Eastern Standard Time people.
All right, appreciate that. Rob Noerr, host of Normal America with Rob Noerr. Love the name, by the way. I always have Normal America. I like the idea of normal, but I'm sorry. What does normal mean? But anyway, Rob, go ahead, take a minute, shout your channel out to everybody where they can find you as well.
Sure, I'll be brief because, like the good lefty that Andrew is, he's late. Like the lefties always are. They can't keep time. Name's Rob Noerr. Like I said, like Andrew said, Normal America with Rob Noerr on YouTube. Just Rob Noerr as it's spelled there on most other platforms. I usually stream Wednesday, Thursday, Friday evenings around 8 p.m. Eastern. Consider myself a libertarian adjacent populist is what I consider myself. Have a lot in common with the Christian nationalists in the direction that I think this country needs to go. It's my honor to be here, helping you prep for a big performance, hopefully. I am interested to see how you take it. It is my goal, like any time I debate Trump v. Biden, because I have the good fortune of being on the correct side of this debate, to allow my opponent to talk about whatever specific topics within this that they want. And so, giving the opening statement, I'm interested to see where you take it, and we'll go from there.
All right, I appreciate it very much. Again, gentlemen, both of you, thank you so much for participating. It's going to be very helpful to me. Okay, ready? Get your clips ready, boys, I guess. But from here, Rob, I expect some fucking blood sports tonight, buddy. Oh, yeah. And that's what we're going to do. So let me move back. I'm here today to represent the very best of the Democrat Party and Joe Biden, who are doing a wonderful job for the nation. Comparing Biden to Trump is almost laughable. After all, how do you compare a multiple convicted felon, fraudster, phony Christian, and Skittles candidate to an accomplished Catholic with years of political experience now being deployed on behalf of the American people? To start with, Biden has deported more illegals than Trump did in his entire 4 years in office, in a matter prescribed by law, even while many of the southern states are currently participating in anarchy and sedition against the United States by not following their constitutionally protected mandates of the federal government. It's beyond obvious that these laws, for instance in Texas, using razor wire and fascist tactics against mostly refugees, is nothing more than a photo op opportunity, playing to their base, while the truth of the matter is Biden is indeed enforcing border laws better thus far than Trump ever did. Next, I'd like to move to lockdowns. I don't know how Biden gets blamed for those, considering Trump himself was at the helm of Operation Warp Speed, working in collusion with Big Pharma and Ouchie Fauci to get out the schmaxine, and then went on a publicity tour promoting it. Rob's cope here will be that Trump allowed the states to implement the policies they wanted on the lockdown orders, but so did Biden. Both look to the medical community and the advice of experts in order to best serve the American people. Next, I'd like to mention the economy. Blockbuster day on Wall Street today. I don't know if you guys saw that. I don't know if Rob saw, but the state of the economy seems to be quite good. Gas prices aren't particularly high, and they are going down. They're decreasing. Inflation is under control, though a bit high. That's to be expected. Latest economic indicators don't spell doom and gloom, but quite the opposite. This after dealing with Trump's vanity stimulus checks, which shot inflation through the roof, kicking the can down the road for you and I. Investment capital is high, consumer spending is high, and this doom and gloom projection of the economy is a total out of control and provenly false narrative. Yet another failed prediction. It's yet another Democrat president dealing with the drunken spending of an out of control, provenly felonious Republican administration. In this debate, all I have to do really is prove Biden is just a hair better than Trump, and I've achieved victory. That's it. And I think based on the policy prescriptions, I can do just that. I have an arsenal ready of Biden policies, which have shifted to the working class for the corporate bailouts common under Trump and his failed policies. These include gun policy, pharmaceutical ease of access, expanding a woman's right to choose, more inclusivity, the LGBTQ, not to mention a move towards science with renewable power to combat global warming. He also recognized predatory banking activity of the hidden fees associated, which directly harm the middle and lower classes of the United States and the poor and minorities. Not to mention expanding our military drone army to keep Americans safe. Trump was busy banging porn stars and paying out hush money since he's an immoral scumbag, while Biden was busy raising a family and following Christian ethics instead of opportunistically grifting the evangelical community, which is full of low IQ religious wackos who he then incited into violence over and over again. There's a whole lot more here I'd like to get into, but with that, I yield my time.
Outstanding. Thank you for that opening statement. And we will now go to the, I'm assuming the pro-Trump side. That would be Rob Noerr. Rob Noerr, you are on the clock.
Okay, thanks so much. Glad to hear that Brianna Wu finally got to Andrew with Progressive Victory Pack. I'm sure he's being paid handsomely for his words here today. So, there's really three ways to look at Trump v. Biden. And it's ironic, basically, the majority of the things that Andrew's saying at the top are arguments for Biden, but in reality, they're not for Biden at all. They're just saying, well, Biden's not as bad as what some people say, which isn't going to be enough to cut the mustard. You could look at foreign policy, which we'll spend time talking about, although briefly. We're on the cusp of World War III. In fact, it was just reported before I came on that it appears Russian warships are now visible from the state of Florida. Which is great. We're going to have another Cuban Missile Crisis, and haven't had that in my lifetime, so fantastic you did see what my grandparents lived through. He is a disaster when it came to the withdrawal of Afghanistan, the way in which he did it. He made us look buffoonish, cost American troops their lives, cost our allies their lives. Russia has been emboldened because of the terrible decisions that Biden's made and the Biden administration has made, which led to Russia having that sort of invasion. Also, Russia understands how feckless the Biden administration is, which also emboldens them. And even China's getting more aggression with places like Taiwan and other places, which seems to make sense, seeing as how one of the first things Biden did was stop a task force that was looking into the pandemic, that was looking at the origins of where that pandemic came from. Suspiciously, Biden, the big guy that's getting 10%, seems to quite frequently only pay lip service to being harsh to China, but when it comes to the most important things, such as holding them accountable for actions such as creation of the pandemic, all of a sudden, he seems very interested in not criticizing them on that fault. So foreign policy, we're closer to World War III than we've been at any point during my lifetime. It is cut and dry. The best argument that Andrew or any Democrat will be able to make is, but none of this is Biden's fault. It's all Trump's fault. And this is the gaslighting that they seek to do all the time. The buck stops with everyone but them. Years and years of disastrous foreign policies from the administration and people within this administration, particularly unelected bureaucrats, they're now part and parcel of this administration, have led us to this point in history where the United States, the most powerful and greatest country in the history of the world, is now losing its leadership both in soft power and hard power on the world stage, drawing us closer to a multipolar world that will be a world of conflict because of the ineptitude of people like Andrew Wilson is defending in the Biden administration, who's been in office. You're right, he has had a lot of experience, hasn't he? 40 years exacerbating all the problems we see. Then we have domestic policies. Happy to talk about immigration. One of the things that I think is hilarious is he says, Biden's deported more people. No shit, when you open the border and allow record numbers to come in every month, there's a larger pool of people for you to send out from. Just today, we see Biden out there pushing his amnesty bullshit. And make no mistake, that is the intention, to have a compliant population and replace the people of this country. It's not just about skin color or anything like that. It's about having people that you have trustworthy, that don't have the values of America and don't have the values of sort of Christianity and worship the government above all else. That's what this replacement is about. And that's exactly what Biden's seeking to achieve by doing this. The economy is a disaster. Yes, we can see that inflation's going down, but for those of you that don't really understand how this works, when they say inflation's going down, that doesn't mean that your products are getting cheaper. That means the rate in which the price is rising is decreasing. Yeah, because we had record levels of inflation, and that's if we trust the government numbers, which are bullshit over and over. But even if we trust them, we can see how bad inflation was. People are suffering all over the place. Gas prices, although they may be dipping down a little now, has much to do with Biden deploying all of the strategic reserves, trying to buy votes just like he's done in the past, what he's trying to do with the forgiving of student loan debt, etc. And so because he's depleted the strategic reserve, things are going to get much worse in the near future. Also, we can see that GDP is going down. The question you should ask yourself is this, not, is this economy okay? It's not, as people could see, and we could go through a list of the prices of things, some things going up 50 to 80%. But the question you should really ask is, given the trillions upon trillions of dollars that Biden spent, on pace to spend as much, if not more than Trump, who spent during a pandemic, is this all we get, the bang for our buck? I think $7.7 trillion at last reading that Biden has spent during his administration, and this is it? If you gave me $7.7 trillion, do you think I'd be able as president to have more money in the average American's pocket? Absolutely. Because this is another socialist scheme of transfer of wealth from the poor and working class to the upper class, just like anytime they do this mass money printing. I believe the M2 money supply, which is the total money in circulation, has increased 50% since right before Biden came in office and his tenure in office. And surprise, surprise, the very people that told us that wouldn't cause inflation were wrong, and it has caused inflation. There is arguments to be made that Republicans and Trump were bad in their spending. I won't disagree with that. That's certainly true. However, the question is Biden better than Trump? No. Biden wanted to spend even more and would have been worse when it came to lockdowns and would have been worse when it came to the spending. The last thing I'll say is issues of culture and corruption. Biden is corrupt. We could talk about that at great length if Andrew would like, but I'll leave him steer the direction of this. However, culturally, I used to know this guy that ran this channel, The Crucible, that understood how important these cultural issues are, and he would be aghast at someone calling Biden a good Catholic or good Christian. The values he has, what Christian values are that? I'm sorry, can you tell me chapter and verse in the Bible where it talks about the importance of sniffing little kids' hair, or denying the existence of your granddaughter, or supporting abortion up until the third trimester? I missed those passages in my reading of the Bible. Granted, I'm not as studious as some people that would call themselves Christian nationalists, but he's an abomination. All of the worst things that you see that come from the excesses of the left, the trans storytelling, the sexuality of children, all of this stuff is represented by Joe Biden. And a further presidency of Joe Biden will mean that these things become even more entrenched in all of our institutions, harming our children even more. Last thing I'll say, the buck stops with Biden, even though it is absolutely true that he is a dementia-addled vegetable that has no idea where he was. But don't leave Andrew and Democrats gaslight you that that's not the case, or somehow he's not to blame for these disastrous things. He is just an empty suit for the establishment that is marching us through, destroying Christianity and destroying this great country in its inexorable march to a globalist society that will ensure that all of us are just cogs in a machine and we worship the government amongst everything else.
Outstanding. Coming in at 6 minutes and 44 seconds. You used up almost all your time there. Great use of time there, Rob. We now open it up.
Killing it.
Andrew, if I'm correct, we have an hour and a half.
Fucking biased moderator
Already?
You're gonna immediately compliment the opposition.
Yep.
Typical
Time
fucking
management.
Republican, huh?
Yep.
Time management, brother.
Yeah, that's not
what it's
bias
about.
at all. No, it's fine. It's cool. It's not bias. Yeah, it's fine.
You're absolutely correct, and I humble myself before the interwebs. But is it an hour and a half or is it 1 hour? For
Give it about an hour 15. Don't let us stick
Gotcha.
any longer than 15 minutes on a topic. Unfortunately, the two of us can get bogged down pretty easy. So move it along, even if we don't like you for it. So Rob, let's start with this idea of Christian ethics and that Biden is somehow a terrible Catholic, but Trump is somehow a great evangelical. Okay, so Trump, it's beyond obvious, paid hush money to Stormy Daniel. He was convicted on basically every single count, talking about this hush money, which was paid out. His own lawyer has confirmed that this is true. He was banging porn stars while he was married. He has a philanthropist pass, right? Or a philandering pass. He's been philandering all over the fucking place. How in the world can you say that this guy is a good Christian exactly? How?
Well, I didn't say that, and nor would I try to make that argument. In fact, there are things both as a Christian or just as a person that has any sort of morality in respecting the institution of marriage. I don't respect anyone that cheats on their wife. I think that that is a pact between
Do
a
you
man.
agree that Trump did?
Yeah, I'd say that he most certainly did. Whether he
Yeah,
did
he
specifically with Stormy Daniels is open for debate, but it's undoubtable that Trump at some point cheated on his wife. My point is this. You're the one talking about
Man
Joe
of
Biden
great
being,
character,
I
right?
understand, like a good lefty, need to interrupt. You're the one talking about ethics and about Joe Biden is the person that actually had good ethics. You can't dispute anything that I said about his sniffing of children, inappropriate showers with his daughter, refusing to acknowledge the existence of his granddaughter. But more importantly than all of that stuff, I care about the actual policies that will be instituted. I'll tell you this, Donald Trump wasn't locking grandmothers up that were praying for people going into abortion clinics for 10, 15 years at a clip. That's what Joe Biden is. That's the sacrament that Joe Biden
Okay,
represents,
hang
the
on.
murder of children.
One point at a time before you gish gallop away to the next point. Like you very often do. You gish gallop. It's going to be 14 fucking points. Let's do 1 point at a time. Let's start with this idea of the hair sniffing and the child grabbing and the blah 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 blah. Has Joe Biden ever been convicted of doing anything ever which has been untoward sexually towards anybody, Rob? Ever?
No, but it's irrelevant to the question.
Now Trump though, you would agree is a multiple convicted felon, right? And that did have to do with sexual relations with a woman who was a porn star, right, Rob?
That's true. However,
that's true.
the institutions themselves are corrupt. The obvious nature of the politicization of these systems, for example, the E. John Carroll, they literally had to change the law to go after him. She claimed that she was sexually assaulted while she was wearing a dress that wasn't created until 2 years later. She claimed that this happened in the middle of a department store, but there were no contemporaneous witnesses. She couldn't remember any of the
He wasn't prosecuted for that.
Yes,
he wasn't prosecuted for that.
He was found civilly liable for that. And as far as the Stormy Daniels,
he wasn't a felony.
As far as the Stormy Daniels thing, he was found guilty of campaign. It's so convoluted.
He paid hush money, dude. He paid hush money to a prostitute.
Is that what he was convicted of? Paying hush money to a prostitute? Go ahead, explain the case to me. Like any good Democrat, explain exactly what the charge against Donald Trump was in that case.
Okay, so my understanding is that the charges which were against him was that he directed campaign money away that was supposed to be going to his campaign back to himself as reimbursement because he paid his lawyer to give hush money to a prostitute he fucked.
That is incorrect. And I'm unsurprised. I'm unsurprised as a Democrat that you would not have the details of this. So as you can see, what Democrats are keen to do is talk about how important these cases are, but they don't even have the most basic details. What he was charged with was as follows. He was charged with falsifying records, which the statute of limitations ran out. So they had to go with a felony that said the falsification of records were in the commission of a separate crime. That separate crime was basically election interference, which requires a third crime to have been committed, unlawful means. Though third crime was never specified, and the judge said it could have been one of any three, which had to do with tax violations, which ended up resulting in Trump paying more in taxes, falsifying records again, which is circular, or FECA violations.
Records about what?
Falsifying records about that have to do with campaign expenditures. Now,
campaign expenditures for what?
What do you mean for what?
What were the campaign expenditures going towards?
The argument was you're misrepresenting what was said anyway.
Oh, I'm misrepresenting,
right.
Huh?
Because your argument was that he redirected campaign finances back to pay off. That's not true. What he was charged with was accepting a loan beyond the contribution limit for an election. Right?
To do what? To do what?
To pay Stormy Daniels.
That's right. To pay hush money to a prostitute, Rob.
We could talk about the morality of paying hush money.
Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about. How is that ethical?
We could talk about that. My point is, like every good Democrat, you don't even have the specific details of the case. Now, this
oh my God, that's pedantry. That's not.
It has nothing to do with. It has nothing to do with being pedantry. It has to do with, for the first time in history, we have charged and convicted a former president, this case of a felony, for a crime that they basically made up, saying that he committed campaign finance violations. That the actual FEC that looked into it said there was no campaign campaign finance violation. And the fact that you want to just say, yeah, but he banged a porn star, that makes him immoral. Again, it's your argument. You're saying that Biden was the one that has Christian ethics, which you can't defend. You're falsely saying, let me finish, you're falsely saying that I said that Trump in his personal life exhibits Christian ethics. I did not say that. I said that Biden can't be the one to point the figure.
Okay. When we got into the actual details, though, of what he was doing with this, it ends up being, well, he was paying hush money to a prostitute. But okay, let's just assume you're not upset about that. You're upset that, they falsely accused him of, some kind of campaign finance violation, which they shouldn't have. He most definitely did pay hush money to a prostitute named Stormy Daniels. How in the world? By the way, you defended that. You defended that for months. You defended that he likely didn't do that. You defended for months that you didn't believe it. You did. You did it on Normal America. I saw it.
It's a lie.
I saw it. You said for sure, you were like, there's no good evidence here that he ever did that.
Oh, man. Wow. Really taking the lefty tack, just making shit out of full cloth. No, I never said that. What I said was likely the whole time was that he probably slept with Stormy Daniels. He probably did pay hush money. That was something that seemed obvious to me. However, this is something that politicians do all the time, including members of Congress that have used $17 million from a slush fund that our taxes go to pay NDAs for women that have accused them. I don't have to like those personal actions. The personal actions of Joe Biden I find to be far more egregious, such as showering inappropriately with his daughter, refusing to acknowledge the existence of his granddaughter. The point I'm making is, at best, it's a wash for Biden, and if we accept that, not to mention allegations of him sexually assaulting Tara Reid, at best, then we would say, well, pragmatically, which direction will the country go in? Will the country be more Christian in its policies with Joe Biden or with Donald Trump? Well, we see what Joe Biden brings. Go ahead, tell us how you're very excited, for example, at all of the trans story times and things like that we see that are all the DEI and shit
we're
like that.
And we're going to get into the inclusivity.
Sure.
But I'm not going to let you fucking pivot like a typical Republican off of this fucking point. This is what you fuckers always do. Again, is it or is it not morally fucking reprehensible that Donald Trump banged a porn star and then clearly paid hush money to his attorney to shut the bitch up?
I do not find that to be morally acceptable. I think that is an example of weak moral character. Now, let me explain what Andrew Wilson here has done. He has been unable to defend that Joe Biden is not a more weaker moral character. He's been unable to defend that the policies that will be implicated will be far more antithetical to Christian beliefs if Joe Biden's in office. And instead, what he's doing is gaslighting everyone that I've made a position that I never have. I never said that Donald Trump is a moral individual.
You totally
I didn't say it in my opening statement.
You totally fucking pretended.
What are you talking about?
Oh, nothing.
There we go.
It was a campaign finance.
There we go.
It had nothing to do with paying off the hooker.
Wow. First he comes in late like a good little lefty, probably getting paid money from progressive dark money groups. And now he takes the left-wing tactic of, well, I can't actually argue the facts of what's been said in this debate, so I'll try to gaslight my audience into believing Rob said something. Can you show me the timestamp? Where did I say? Can you tell me where I said that Trump was an ethical, moral Christian? Was it in my opening statement?
So he's not an ethical, moral Christian?
I don't believe so. I believe he's. I believe the mere fact of cheating on your wife.
So from a moral standpoint, we're already starting from the even point that both of these men are immoral. Using your own logic, they're both at least immoral, right?
Correct.
Okay, got it. So now I think we can move on to the next. Let's get into this idea.
Just to be clear, you won an argument against yourself and have said nothing against.
How did I win it against myself?
Because it was never an argument. It was never an argument that I made. You're trying to make the argument that we should ignore the fact, if we want to embrace Christian ethics, that a government of Joe Biden is far worse than a government of Trump. And the way you're attacking that is by saying...
You haven't proven Biden did anything wrong.
The way you're attacking that is by saying, well, Trump banged a porn star and paid hush money, so he's immoral as well. And isn't that true that he's at least equal with their morality? I don't think that puts him equal with Biden. I think Biden's worse. I think showering with your daughter in an inappropriate way is far worse than
Prove that he did it.
His daughter said so in her own diary.
Oh, his daughter said so.
Correct.
Oh, okay. Well, that proves it then. It's not like we had, a giant court case recently with Trump where he got found guilty on 34 fucking counts related to this hush money case, and that's actual evidence in the court of law, and he was found guilty. On the other hand, though, your issue of, well, Biden's equally as evil, your proof is because the daughter said so. Oh, okay, then, Rob. Believe all women, Rob? Hashtag believe all women, right? Right? That's what we're doing? We're going to believe all women, Rob?
I would believe that she wouldn't have a reason to make that up. And the idea what you're conflating is someone inappropriately sexual contact with a child versus consensual adults having an affair, which I don't support and find it immoral, but there's different levels to the depravity and immorality, as you well know. And again, all of it's a red herring to a point that I never made into this debate. I would say even if a candidate that embraced the policies of Joe Biden was a better Christian in their personal life than Joe Biden, if that resulted in abortions on demand, sexualization of our children, etc., I would still prefer the immoral person in their real life to be president than the person who is more moral in their personal life and teaches
that
the
makes
sexuality.
No sense.
Of course
that makes no sense. Okay, so from my standpoint, I say at least even from your worldview, both of these men are immoral men. From your worldview, you concede this is true.
Correct.
But then when we look at the evidence for even why you think that Biden is equally immoral to Trump, you say because his daughter said so.
It's one argument I made, and my argument isn't that he's equally. That was
pretty
your
weak
argument.
Fucking argument.
That was your
just based
argument.
on hearsay.
So what you can see, it's clever, and I'm appreciating that Andrew's doing this because again, it is emblematic of a good Democrat. He's conflating two different ideas. On one hand, he's conflating the idea that any act of immorality is on par with other acts of immorality, which is just nonsensical. For example, it would be immoral to lie. However, lying is not as immoral as inappropriate sexual contact with a child. That is a level of immorality that's worse. And so he conflates and says, well, they both have done immoral things, which is true. I would say almost everyone's done immoral things, but I think cheating on your wife's a level of immorality that we deserve to call out. Then he says on the second hand, he says, oh, well, we can't believe the accusations against Biden because it's just hearsay, but we have to accept this court case. But again, the court case isn't saying that he was found guilty of banging Stormy Daniels. It's irrelevant as to whether or not he actually had sex with her. They didn't have to find that he had sex with her.
You just know that he did.
We know that Joe Biden inappropriately showered with his daughter. We know that he was accused. Of course we do.
No, we don't. How is that known? It's just an accusation in a fucking diary.
Can you explain to me why his daughter in a diary that she did not intend for people to see would make up a lie?
Oh, I don't know. Possibly because her father happens to be the most powerful man in the world, and it would bring a whole lot of attention to her, like what happens with women all the time, gives them perverse incentives.
In a private diary that she had to sue for being released to the public.
Oh, so she's retracting that happened?
Retracting that what happened?
So is she actually making a public accusation that her father did that?
She hasn't spoken on it, to my knowledge.
Oh, so then your proof is no proof.
No, my proof is when someone says something in private when they don't expect other people to hear it, and they make an accusation against someone that they would stand to benefit not making that accusation for, I tend to take that more at face value than, well, 12 people that were on a jury that hate Trump in a district that overwhelmingly was against Trump said he paid hush money, so that means he's more immoral. And again, I understand wanting to stay hyper-focused on this point because you can't defend the record of Joe Biden. I never made the argument that Trump was moral. And lastly, I'll say this. Andrew started off this saying, we can at least say that on a ground, they're both coming from a position of immorality. Hasn't said word one about the actual policies that come out and how they're more anti-Christian.
Okay, I'm happy to shift to the policy if you will just admit that the only proof that you have of Biden doing any of this all of this horrible touching, inappropriate touching of children is not from an actual eyewitness coming forward and saying and accusing him of that, but from some fucking diary that any girl could have written about anything.
No, that's one example. I said, for example, there were multiple women before Biden was running in 2020 that came out and said he had inappropriate sexual contact with them. We could see with our own eyes his inappropriate sniffing and sexualization of children. We could see from Tara Reid her specific accusation of sexual assault. We could see the immorality of ignoring the existence of of one of his granddaughters. All of this is beyond hearsay. This is absolute provable. You have no argument against any of it. You know it exists. You'll just have to pretend like every good Democrat that actually Biden's the sharpest man in the world behind the scenes and don't believe your lying eyes with everything you see.
Well, actually, Trump's the most moral man in the fucking world.
No one made that
banging all kinds of women
debate.
and cheating on his wife and being a horrific bastard.
No one made that argument in this debate.
I mean, you did.
I did not.
You said that it's completely immoral that he did that.
Give me the timestamp.
Gentlemen, this is great television, but we need to move on. There is more than just the morality.
Saved by the fucking moderator? Really? You're gonna get saved by the moderator?
I was going to give you the last word on this, Andrew, so we could move on. Because I think you do need the last word in this.
He needs.
All right, fine, whatever. So you see how Rob easily falls into a basic logic trap like a fool. I explained, aren't both of these men equally immoral? He says, well, at least they're equally immoral. They're both at least equally bad. I even used the word equally on purpose to make sure that he confirmed it. He fucking confirmed it. And then what happens when I say, okay, even if I'm granting you that at least puts us on the same moral playing field, that you're still going to vote for an immoral man and I'm going to vote for an immoral man. But then when I ask him for the evidence of the immorality of Biden from his sexual antics, he has, his fucking diary once. No eyewitnesses, nobody coming forward with an actual accusation, nothing. He has fucking nothing.
You want me to respond to that? Are you ready to get to something?
Yeah, I'll give you the last word, and then we'll get into policy. Sure.
Nothing is an interesting way of ignoring everything that I just said. Ignoring the existence of his granddaughter, the multiple women that came out with the accusations of inappropriate touching of Joe Biden, Tara Reid and her accusation that came out with it, a woman coming forward of sexual assault, way worse than consensual sex with a porn star, the sniffing of children that we see routinely. But yes, it is true that his daughter, and in a particularly egregious case, in a private diary, did also say that she felt that she was screwed up for her life because she had inappropriate sexual showers with her father. Now, I understand that Andrew wants to hyperfixate on the immorality of Trump, but sleeping with a porn star and cheating on your wife, as grotesque as that may be, does not rise near to the level of any of the other things that we talked about Joe Biden, most of which are uncontested. He literally said nothing and just said, oh, Rob's only talking about a diary. I will give Andrew credit for being a good lefty Democrat here, though. He's arguing quite fluently like them, and getting smacked down like I routinely do to all these people. Next.
Oh yeah, just declare that you won the debate, and it means you did, Rob.
I learned from the crucible on that one.
Yeah, that's right. So I guess moving on to the next point, if you don't mind, let's bring up the idea of the evil Russian battleships, which are going to institute World War III on the United States. Can you explain when you believe that this massive apocalypse is going to happen from the Russian military, Rob? When do you think we're going to be under the apocalypse of Russia? Is that going to happen soon? Few months? When?
It's hard to say. The biggest threat of this actually isn't a purposeful act of aggression by either the United States or Russia. One of the reasons that the Cold War was so scary was the idea of miscalculation, which is the idea that because there's such high tensions and weapons in close proximity to both of these countries, and both of these countries have sort of a first use type mindset, that they're not going to go down if they feel that they're going to be obliterated, there's a chance of miscalculation, and so one person might be threatened and launch some sort of attack. This is irrelevant to the greater story of what I was telling you.
You brought it up.
I brought it up as yet another example that's contemporaneous to today of the actual world being on fire. Trump left with historic peace deals in the Middle East. With Biden, we have conflict with Israel-Palestine, Russia invading Ukraine, China aggressing towards Taiwan, BRICS nations becoming stronger than ever, the United States getting into another Vietnam-esque quagmire where they're deploying their military readiness, the United States losing its economic superpower, its status as an economic superpower, the dollar no longer being is considered. Just the other day, Saudi Arabia, for example, for the first time in nearly 15 years, decided they're not going to exclusively trade oil in U.S. dollars.
But so what? That doesn't mean anything. What do you think the ramifications of Saudi Arabia not using the petrodollar, which, by the way, if you understand what the petrodollar do you even know what it is? What is it, Rob? What's the petrodollar?
Petrodollar is the idea that the dollar is the reserve currency when it comes for the OPEC nations to trade their energy.
Yeah, okay. So in the OPEC nations, this is true.
Yeah.
Guaranteed by the United States Navy, right?
Correct.
Okay. Is the United States Navy going to stop protecting Saudi Arabia?
No, but that's not the issue.
No.
Right,
no, they're not. And do you know why they're not?
Go ahead.
They're not because we're still going to have the same amount of oil imports and exports from Saudi Arabia. The petrodollar is not going to do anything. It didn't do shit to the markets. Even the announcement did nothing to the markets. It doesn't matter if Saudi Arabia trades in the petrodollar. They've never been in some formal agreement where they had to begin with.
So the problem is, it's not that the United States wouldn't continue to protect. Of course, the United States is still, because of the disastrous policies of Joe Biden, is still going to be reliant on nations like the OPEC nations for our energy needs. And so we have every reason to want to continue to secure. The problem with the removal of the petrodollar is that it is the first step to signifying to the world that the United States is no longer the global reserve currency and the dominant factor. And what's going to end up happening is, because we've had Joe Biden send a signal to the OPEC nations let me finish. Joe Biden ran on the promise that he would put fossil fuel companies out of business. And so Saudi Arabia and the OPEC nations see the writing on the wall that they're going to have to start trading with other global partners because Biden right now is over a barrel because he needs to try to buy votes to win the election. But as soon as him and his administration...
Let me respond so you don't fucking filibuster the whole debate. Let's start with this. Let's start with this idea that if the Saudi Arabia stops engaging in the petrodollar, that suddenly there's going to be, do you think that suddenly there's going to be mass economic collapse and that other nations, other OPEC nations are going to stop trading with the United States in oil? Because they're not going to, Rob. And not only that, it doesn't weaken our dollar at all. No, it's never weakened our dollar. It's not weakening our economy. It's not some grand signal to other nations. The world reserve currency is still the dollar, and it's going to remain the dollar. Where else is it going to go? What else are we going to use? They keep on saying that they're going to use crypto. They're not going to fucking use crypto. So what do you think they're going to move to other than the dollar as the world reserve currency? Nothing.
They'll probably go to several currencies from sort of economic trading blocks is where the direction's likely to happen. If you decide that as the United States, you're the reserve currency and you could over a 3-year span print 50% of dollars into existence, what that does is the rest of the world sees that the currency is no longer stable. If you're OPEC and you hear a promise from the leader of the United States that he's going to put you out of
stable.
Let me finish, lefty. Keep pumping on that phallic cigarette like any good lefty. Let me finish
keep on
my
chopping
point.
down those cheeseburgers while you fucking talk shit about me smoking.
No cheeseburger here. I do that after I crush lefties like you to have a satisfying midnight snack. But what you'll see happening is that these nations are going to start realizing out of necessity that even though it's beneficial right now to still have the U.S. currency as the world reserve currency and to have the petrodollar and to still have they're going to start pursuing other relationships because they see the writing on the wall. And the United States has gone from the predominant... Keep in mind, it's not just about Joe Biden. That's one bone I'll throw you. It's about the people that are really running the Biden administration. The unelected bureaucrats in places like the State Department, in places like the intel agencies, and in other institutions in this country that have taken this great country, of the greatest country in the history of the world, that had economic, cultural superpower and military superpower, and it has pissed it away for their own personal benefit and for their globalist allies. And so now the average person in this country's labor has been sold out to the rest of the fucking world, and we're going to suffer for it. Your children will suffer, which luckily you decided to have kids before you became a fucking lefty, or you'd probably just be pounding some dude in the ass.
Leading everywhere except to the point of the actual petrodollar. So let's start with this. What actual policy did Biden institute that led to Saudi Arabia leaving the petrodollar? Can you tell me what actual an actual one, Rob, an actual policy that led to that? Just one.
It's not just about actual policies, right? It's
so also, you can't.
No, I'll tell you. I know this is bad form. Indulge me just once to respond with a question. If your country's lifeblood is reliant on a product, in this case fossil fuels, and the primary trading partner you have, whose currency you use, comes out and says, we're going to put you out of business, do you think it would behoove you to start looking for other trading partners?
It could, sure.
Well, that's the policy. The policy is that
Joe Biden...
That's not
a policy.
The policy is...
That would be the same thing under Trump. What are you talking about?
Show me one...
The same logic would apply under Trump.
So true.
Yeah, same logic, yeah.
It's the exact opposite. Trump talked about the importance of fossil fuels.
Because I answer within the confines of the hypothetical. If A is true, then is B true, then is C true. I can agree to that, but that doesn't mean that any of that's actually going on, or that Biden has even a coalition of policies which led to Saudi Arabia, who's been wanting to do this, by the way, for years and years and years. Their own crown prince has explained this over and over and over, that they've been wanting to move away from this far before the Biden administration was even a fucking twinkle in the nation's eye. Before anybody knew that this guy would be president, Saudi Arabia has been talking about doing this. So have many Middle Eastern nations. Tell me what policies or configuration of policies that the Biden administration has postulated or enacted that actually led to that. Any.
Again, I don't have to tell you the policy when you've already conceded that their posturing would be reason enough for them to go elsewhere. And like most people that defend Biden, what will be told by you throughout this debate is, trust us, all of this bad shit was going to happen anyways. It just so happened to happen under Biden, but he's not at fault for it. If it's so true that Saudi Arabia was always going to move away from the petrodollar, why did they decide to wait until Biden was in office as opposed to doing it when Trump was there?
I think that they saw that there was an opportunity finally when a contract renewal came up, which, by the way, even that's kind of iffy to just not renew it. Just because Biden happens to be in office has nothing to do with the fact that they have not talked about this over and over and over again. Many nations have talked about leaving the petrodollar, leaving it completely behind. You can look it up yourself. Saudi Arabia has been talking about it for years and years and years, long before Biden. You can't name any policies or any even configuration of policies in a combination that actually was the deciding factor for Saudi Arabia. You can't name any. And that tells me that that's because there aren't any. There was no Biden policies which led to Saudi Arabia doing this job.
It wasn't just the policies, as you already conceded. The posturing enough would be enough to get them to search elsewhere. And the policies that he specifically implemented about the importance of getting off fossil fuels as our energy that we default to, EV policies, green energy policies, etc. All of this is furthering the promise that Biden made that he's an enemy of fossil fuels and oil, and he's trying to bury them around the world. In addition to that, you can also see policies that show the fecklessness of Joe Biden around the world, such as things like the bombing of a pipeline that we know the United States and their allies were responsible for, an act of global terrorism, global environmental terrorism, which, by the way, I thought you lefties cared about. But all of a sudden, when it's Biden and his allies...
You mean the pipeline that Russia bombed?
Yeah, Russia didn't bomb it, as has been admitted by the United States intelligence, Ukrainian intelligence, etc.
Then who bombed it?
The current working theory that we're being told is that intel agencies within Ukraine did it without the approval of the United States, which is bullshit.
Oh, okay. So then it wasn't a responsibility of the United States government or Joe Biden that pipeline was bombed?
No. The idea that you just tried to blame Russia for bombing their own pipeline and sabotaging themselves, right? And now you're trying to immediately pivot to, oh, never mind. Now I trust completely that Ukraine did it on its own.
I can concede the point without it mattering. Even if I said the last amount of propaganda that I had coming out of a war-torn region was that Russia bombed their own pipeline, if I'm incorrect, and the latest is that no, Ukraine bombed the pipeline. It doesn't take away from my point that has nothing to do with the Biden administration's policies. What?
Ukraine is a vassal state of the Biden administration, and if they're acting out of line, then it's up to Biden, who is
a vassal state?
Correct.
Oh, who got on their knees and became a vassal to the United States?
Zelensky.
Is there official paperwork for the vassalage?
Haven't you seen his sniffing? I'm sure it's been up Biden's ass many a time. He sniffs quite similarly to Biden with the little kid's hair. In fact,
yeah. So you think that Zelensky should have just rolled over and let Russia take over Ukraine?
It's not the argument that I made, but even if we could talk specifically about what Zelensky should have did, there's two things I'd like to say before we move on to that, though. One, anyone who's watching notices that Andrew hasn't made one offensive reason why to prefer Biden to Trump yet. It's all defense. Oh, the petrodollar. It's all a bunch of bad shit that happened under Biden. Him saying, well, I don't think it was really Biden's fault. Hasn't given you one reason to vote for Biden.
You brought up warships in an apocalypse, and then when you're pressed on the warships in the apocalypse, you go, well, there's not really going to be a fucking apocalypse. Don't go get bunkers, guys. I'm actually full of shit. I just brought it up because it's a rhetorical example of thing I don't like. But you don't actually believe that that's going to lead to some global conflict. You don't believe it's going to lead to World War III. You don't believe it's going to lead to a nuclear missile crisis. You don't believe any of that, Rob.
It's not true. I believe that it will lead to hostilities and aggression from people around the world that understand the United States is no longer the hegemon that they once were. And again, I'll reiterate this point. I was quite clear in my opening statement, I was quite clear in my opening statement, like I always am when I'm debating Trump v. Biden, that I was going to leave Andrew pick the areas of Biden's success that he wanted to talk about the most, of why we should prefer Biden to Trump. And this is the bullshit that he's come up with. Playing defensive. Well, yes, just because we're further aggressing towards World War III, right. It's not as bad as you're making it sound.
Yeah, let's go on offense then, Rob. How did you as a libertarian just say that, oh, you're sad that the global hegemony of the United States is being weakened? Oh, that's terrible. Is the global hegemony of the United States, this colonizing nation, being weakened? And from your libertarian worldview, this is bad because...
First off, I'm not a libertarian. I'm a populist who's libertarian adjacent. Second, a hegemon doesn't necessarily mean that we're world police. I don't think that we should be. However, hegemon would mean both culturally...
And you would want to weaken it.
Listen, culturally, economic, and militaristically, we should still be the number one superpower. I'm all for that. That doesn't mean that we have to be the world police. What that would mean, though, that people respected and feared us and wouldn't step out of line by aggressing intentionally against allies. Instead, we have the exact opposite posture from people like you in the Biden administration, which is to beat their chest and rattle their sabers, but actually be incompetent buffoons that are destroying the United States military while they attempt to be world police around the world. And then, once they cause all of these disastrous situations like in Libya and Syria, you then turn around and tell us, oh, we have to open our borders to take in the refugees that our fucking policies in the first place caused.
Okay, wait a second. That actually makes no sense. Why is it that a global hegemony, which is what you're saying, the American global hegemony is being weakened?
Correct.
It's being weakened by these policies.
Correct.
That, from your perspective, would be good.
No.
And if you were ramping down a global hegemony, why is it that you wouldn't institute policies which would do that?
Because the idea of a libertarian, which I'm not, being upset about the United States being a military, economic, or cultural superpower is nonsensical. It's how that superpower would be used. I have a problem with the constant invasion of countries. I have a problem with the constant world policing. I don't have the problem with the United States military being big and bad enough that no one would ever fuck with us. I have no problem with our military being so impressive that it's an deterrent to fuck with us and our allies, which means to
what does that mean? What does that mean? Do we need, in order to be the most powerful military so nobody ever fucks with us, do we need to be in 146 countries? If not, how many do we need to be in? How many?
Very few. How about our own?
How many is that?
How
many is very few? 10, 12, 13?
Sure.
You sure?
The specific
The answer is sure?
Correct. The specific number, I don't think we need bases in almost any country. I have no problem in first world countries that we're allied with having sort of a shared communication and military where we have some sort of partial setup of bases in those countries. What we shouldn't be doing is having military bases in, 400 something around the globe. I don't think that we should be doing that. It's certainly, as we've expanded the amount of military bases, it hasn't led to the increase in United States hard power. In fact, quite the opposite. The difference between me and you is this. You'll defend things like the disastrous Afghanistan policy that was 20 years of 17 different generals telling us that we were kicking ass in Afghanistan, we're doing good.
Yeah, let's get into Afghanistan.
That actually led to the United States hegemony being weakened. I would say that it would help United States, both economic, cultural, and hard power, to not be in a disastrous country like Afghanistan and actually have our troops back home protecting our border, which would cause more fear and respect to people, both allies and enemies.
You mean the same Afghanistan that Donald J. Trump promised us that he was going to pull our troops out of, and then it turns out he couldn't get his own generals to listen to him because they had so little respect for him as the commander-in-chief and were unwilling to follow those orders because they considered them unlawful, so they just didn't follow him. He was so ineffective, he didn't even know that we hadn't pulled out of Afghanistan. Some commander-in-chief, Rob.
You're talking about Syria. He didn't realize that they hadn't pulled out of Syria.
No, I'm talking about Afghanistan.
So wait, your argument is
the ramp down in Afghanistan, which basically never actually happened.
That's right. You said that Trump was so incompetent that he was unaware that we didn't pull out of Afghanistan.
Yeah, that we did not.
I think he knew that we didn't.
As significant. No, not until he was told. He was finally told months later. No, we really didn't pull out of this.
He never expected. The timetable was always after his presidency from the withdrawal of Afghanistan. Now, in Syria, you're correct, but both of these examples, even if I were to take your example at face value, just shows the corruption of the people that are running the Biden administration. Remember, Biden's just a dementia-addled vegetable. The people running the Biden administration are unelected bureaucrats, those that resisted lawful orders from Trump. If you watch the Trump impeachment, you can see the State Department saying over and over, Trump went against our foreign policy. That's the fundamental problem with this country. Unelected bureaucrats that don't have our interest at heart and want to attack things like Christianity and family values are actually running the country.
You mean the deep state?
That's one word.
I mean, isn't that a word that we could use, which would essentially take all of the unelected bureaucrats who are appointed in lifelong positions in order to dictate foreign policy over, extended generations because they're in power for so long? The quote deep state, right?
Correct. Intelligence, not just State Department.
And that would be part of the swamp, right, Rob?
That's correct.
Yeah, how much of that got drained by your buddy Trump?
Trump did a terrible job. In fact, I'll even go further than that. If Trump's elected again, I would say the chances of him actually draining the swamp in any meaningful way, probably not that high again. The difference is this. If you're going to be in the unenviable position where you say Joe Biden is ran by people that are the swamp and is making the swamp worse, and Trump just won't be able to deal with them as much as he should, that's still a reason to prefer Donald Trump. And who knows, maybe this time, because he now understands just how pervasive it is, through examples that you're celebrating, such as generals stabbing him in the back and refusing to listen to his lawful orders, perhaps next time he'll do what's necessary and actually get rid of these people. Unleash classified.
Why in the world? would a Trump base ever elect a guy into office again who made the promise? There was two major promises made by the Trump administration. Both of them were objective failures. The first was on immigration and building the wall. He completely failed. He failed at building the wall. He failed at getting rid of the immigration problem in the United States. He failed over and over and over and over again. His State Department was so ineffective, he couldn't even put a travel ban during a heightened terror alert on Muslims from entering into the nation. That's how ineffective his own attorneys were, his own administration was. He completely and miserably failed on his immigration policy, and he didn't drain a single person out of the swamp, not one. He was an objective failure long before his impeachment. I don't know how you could ever say anything to the opposite of that. Why the fuck would you ever give him another chance, Rob?
Because the alternative is the swamp. Right? That'd be like saying, would you rather have a cop that's ineffectual at stopping rapists or a rapist? Right? And so I agree with you. I would have preferred Vivek Ramaswamy or Ron DeSantis over Donald Trump, probably. I'm not so sure about DeSantis, but probably that would be the case. But yeah, I've argued what you've done is you've proved what my worldview has been for a decade, which is how corrupt these institutions are. Now when it's been thrown in our face, which is exactly the best part of a Trump presidency, it made it indisputable where even lefties like you have to admit, okay, this is real, because for years and years you said, that's not true. There are actors within the deep state, that's a conspiracy, that would be unwilling to listen to a president. All of a sudden, when Trump's elected, we have Chuck Schumer, the head of the opposition, go on national television and tell us that Donald Trump can't even criticize the FBI because they'll find 6 ways of Sunday at getting back at him, which is exactly what they did.
Yeah, he's the opposing party. His job is to go out and ridicule the president of the United States, not necessarily to work with him, especially if he has policies which he considers to be a threat to the United States. That's his fucking job, Rob.
What's the relevancy to what I'm saying here? Of course, Chuck Schumer is going to be politically opposed to Donald Trump. That's different than saying the people that operate under Trump in the executive branch cannot be criticized by the president because they will sabotage the president, which is what Chuck Schumer was saying. He can say that
it had no enforcement of policy.
That's
He's allowed to make whatever fucking criticisms he wants.
Of course he's allowed to say that. That's not a criticism. That's him giving a warning to the United States and to Donald Trump, the people of the United States and Donald Trump, just who runs the show. That's exactly what was going on, and the proof's in the pudding.
They run the show. They're the sitting senators and congressmen of the United States.
The
of course
intel
they run the
agencies.
fucking show.
The intel agencies.
No,
that's
Chuck
what we're
Schumer
talking
said
about specifically.
that you shouldn't go after your own intelligentsia, which you put in place, okay, under your own policies. You shouldn't be at that point going after them, your appointments. Okay, because if you do, they tend to have 6 ways from Sunday of getting back at you. And what that means, very simply, right, is that they can go out and say, look, he gave all sorts of incredibly crazy fucking orders and things like this. That's why his administration is a mess. I can't even see why you would have a problem with that. If they felt like Trump was engaging in a dereliction of duty, their job as intelligentsia, wouldn't it be to tell the American people that, Rob?
No, which is exactly
no.
Listen,
what?
No, their job would not be to, while they're in office, tell the American people that. Their job would be to resign, and then, like any civilian, they could voice their opinions if they wanted. Instead, what they did was unlawfully sabotage, including doing things like spying on the president of the United States, leaking untold amounts of times to the press. Look, I'll concede your point that Trump didn't do enough to drain the swamp.
They weren't spying on Trump. Barr never was able to prove that. He never proved it.
That's not true. They spied on Trump. Here's what we know. We know, for example, that they did, we could, right out of the gate with the Alpha Bank story, we know that the people that were connected to Hillary Clinton, that were working with her, that were the tech guy that went in, we know that he was getting DNS data straight from Trump Tower, and from Trump's White House office while he was there. So they spied on those portions. We absolutely have definitive proof. The idea that they spied on Trump's team, which is also definitive proof, and we know that that legally gives them the right for the two-hop rule.
Let's slow down. What definitive proof do you have that the intelligence agencies of the United States were spying on Trump in a way which was unlawful?
The DNS data that they were spying on, that the person connected to Hillary Clinton was like the metadata that comes from your DNS data that comes on computers. Secondly, we could infer that because they were spying on his team, and lawfully, if once you get those warrants to spy, you have a two-hop rule where you're allowed to get all communications between the target of the warrant and everyone they've talked to, and then everyone those people have talked to. That gave them access to all communications within the Trump campaign.
Okay, Barr said something very similar to this.
Barr sucks as well.
But when Barr was sitting in front of Congress, and he was asked to demonstrate this, Rob, he fucking couldn't. He couldn't demonstrate it. They gave him months to demonstrate it. He never could. He could never show definitive proof. He could never show anything. They could never even show that there was FISA warrants. They couldn't prove any of this.
It's not true. It's not
It
true.
is
They
true.
conceded. That's even James Comey's admitted that the FISA warrants were illegal. Like it's just definitive. The IG Horowitz admitted it. The Durham report
What?
admitted it. They're
No, the Durham
literally
report
the
did not
FISA
admit it.
warrants were,
No.
that is not true. You're just incorrect. I'll again remind you that Andrew is once more playing defense. I'm being generous and allowing him what to talk about. Now we've got to the point of, okay, they spied on Trump's team, but maybe the reports didn't say exactly
No, they
what
didn't
Rob
spy
said.
on Trump's team. There's
That's
never
not true.
been definitive proof that they've spied on Trump's
They've
team.
admitted it. I don't
And-
know what to say. Just
No,
because
they haven't
you
admitted
are,
it.
just
They're just
because
asserting it.
you don't know what a man and a woman is, right? And the OnlyFans girls that you debate and whatever have apparently brainwashed you, doesn't mean that objective reality doesn't exist for the rest of us.
How
Yes,
come
they
Barr couldn't
definitively admitted that
demonstrate-
those
How
FISA
come
warrants were
Barr
illegal.
couldn't demonstrate it ever? He's never been able to demonstrate that.
What are you
ever.
talking about? The IG at the time that Barr was still in office showed that these FISA warrants were illegal. The head of the people that signed off on it, like James Comey, who signed 2 of those warrants, admitted that he wouldn't have done them and they
Yeah,
were illegal.
Wait, the 2 James Comey warrants were for what?
To spy on Trump's team, Carter Page.
No. What were they precisely to do?
They were FISA warrants against Carter Page.
Carter Page.
Correct.
Not against. That's not
Now
spying
you're
on
changing-
Trump. That's not spying
Again,
on Trump.
You're now
That's
arguing
spying-
semantics.
No.
You can't even
That's
keep your
somebody in
argument.
the no. That's somebody who's in the administration itself, right? Who they believed, had some kind of issue going on, foreign issue with Russia, something like this.
Mm-hmm.
That's not spying on Trump. That's what Trump declared. He said he was
right.
spied on.
He was.
And that's the proof I'm looking for. Where is it?
So you're all over the map. One, you're saying that there was no evidence that they spied and that it wasn't illegal and no one admitted it. Now you're saying, oh no, I guess you're conceding that they did admit it and that did occur, but it was just to Carter Page and it wasn't to Trump or the rest of his team. It's nonsensical and it's irrelevant anyways.
How is that nonsensical?
It's nonsensical because it legally gave them the right to have communication access between Carter Page, everyone he talked to, and everyone those people talked to. And
Yeah,
the
but
fact
that's-
that we saw leaks...
That's
that
not
went-
spying.
Yes,
That's,
it is.
You suspect somebody of being a criminal or engaging in criminal activity. You're going to tap their electronics.
Define spying.
Well, I mean, I would say that that spying would have a nefarious connotation of you looking in on somebody.
Why is it
in an-
nefarious?
well, I would say that you would have a nefarious connotation to it. So spying, I would use as a military term more than I would use it as a domestic term.
I would say a clandestine surveillance of a person or entity.
Okay.
Does that sound fair?
Okay.
In
we
other
can go
words,
with
you're
that, yeah.
surveying someone without their knowledge.
Yeah, but the difference is, let me ask you this. If that is the only working definition that we're going with, the semantic definition, I think I'll just grant it, because then spying itself would not be even problematic, right? Because in this case, then you're just saying that if the FBI, taps a fucking cell phone of a drug dealer, they're spying on him.
Right. That is true.
Okay,
And it
if
is
that's-
true.
If that's the case, then if that's the case, then I could just grant this. And that doesn't sound like it's in any way nefarious. It sounds like it's run-of-the-mill law enforcement stuff, dude.
Okay, so 2 things. One, the idea that they spied on a presidential campaign and presidential team is a big deal, because you could say, well, theoretically it could be lawful, but it would still be a big deal because we haven't had that told to the American people that a president's ever lived through that. Secondly, this specific spying, will you acknowledge this, a simple yes, no, spying can be nefarious?
Yeah, by this if we're going to operate off of this definition, yeah, I could say it could be nefarious.
Okay,
It could not be
so
nefarious.
then given the specifics
Yeah.
of this one, was this spying nefarious?
I don't think so. It sounds like it's kind
Well,
of routine, run-of-the-mill law enforcement.
Then explain why an IG concluded it was illegal.
Yeah, but just because something is illegal doesn't mean that it's nefarious. So I can give you an example of this too. Let's say a police officer had what he considered a random suspicion that something was going on inside of a house. He followed his intuition. He kicked in a door. I wouldn't say that he did anything nefarious or even anything problematic, but it could still be ruled as being an illegal action.
Nefarious maybe I would concede in that problematic. It would certainly be problematic, at least from a legal standpoint.
Yeah, it could be problematic legally, but I'm not saying. But I don't think it's nefarious.
When we see that it's illegal, and then when we see that also the IG report and other reports and things that you could see publicly yourself shows that at the top level of the FBI there was a clear bias against Donald Trump, including one of the agents that was the on-the-ground person tasked with investigating him and Hillary Clinton, talking about the need for a quote insurance policy to prevent Donald Trump from coming into office. When you see that they then took illegal actions to spy on the president of the United States' team, it's clear that it was with nefarious intent. It's clear that it was illegal. It's clear that it was unprecedented, and it's clear that it shows that this deep state that you would mock me for saying actually exists.
I hate to break in, but okay, you're referring to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act's warrants that were given during the time, right? Is that what you're referring to?
Correct.
What exactly makes these warrants illegal?
Because the signing off on, but there was various things, such as the procedures that the FBI had to follow were not followed. So 117 times they violated what's called the Woods procedure, which is that you need to constantly recheck the evidence that you're using to ensure that that FISA warrant was obtained.
So then,
let me finish.
It's just procedurally illegal, but that doesn't mean that it was actually the intent of it was wrong.
No, that's
Rob.
not true. That's not true.
It is true.
Like, let me give you a specific. This is what the IG. So there are two. One, we've actually found someone criminally guilty. His name is Kevin Kleinsmith. What he did was change language to say the opposite of the truth in order to obtain the warrant. They asked the CIA if Carter Page worked with them to go after Russian assets. The CIA sent an email that basically said yes, and Kevin Kleinsmith changed that to say no. So that was actually, he was found criminally accountable for that. The example that was more egregious that the IG Horowitz gave, though, was the fact that the primary subsource was a suspected Russian spy by the name of Igor Dushenko, who made most of the salacious allegations and criminal allegations and was working with Hillary Clinton's team to do this.
Yeah, that's what informants do. That's what informants do.
Let me finish real quick, since we're bringing this up. What happened was the IG was shocked that they never actually attempted to contact Dushenko to see if his story was true. When they finally did, after the warrant was, I believe, accepted twice, before the third time the warrant was accepted, they reached out to the subsource, who basically told them, oh, that was just all bar talk. Yeah, I don't have any proof for any of this. What the FBI did was went to the FISA court and said, we talked to the primary subsource, and we feel that he's telling the truth. What the IG was startled by was he didn't tell the FISA court that what they felt he was telling the truth about was that it was all bullshit. They left that part out. That shows nefarious intent. That is clearly intentionally sandbagging.
I don't think it. I don't think it does. I don't think.
How does this help you prove that Biden's a better choice than Trump?
Okay, well, if you want to move off the point, we can.
I'm happy to talk about it all night.
I'll go. But what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll just give a quick close here, and we can move on to immigration if you're fine with that. But again, that doesn't actually show nefarious intent. It shows that there's processing errors. All you're doing is giving me illegal processing errors. You had never actually demonstrated there was anything wrong with the FBI or CIA or any intelligence agency tapping a person's phone just because they happen to be in the Trump administration if they were in the midst of committing crimes.
What was the crime they were committing?
That's totally okay. They're under the suspicion of committing crimes. They're under the suspicion of it.
And what was the proof of that?
Well, again, it's a suspicion. And so you go to court under suspicion. You can't prove crimes when they're under suspicion. You do this with drug dealers all the time, Rob. They're under suspicion, and so you give them surveillance so you can prove the crime.
That's specifically not how FISA warrants work. A FISA warrant, you have to re-up. They're only good for 3 months. At least these ones were only good for 3 months, and you have to continually check your information. Before we spy on an American, let alone a part of a presidential team, we should make sure that the evidence we're using is at least attempted to be verified.
They're not above the law.
Of course not.
And by the way, it was my close, and he interrupted me like a typical conservative because you won't even let me get through the argument, Rob.
Some call that Alpha Chad.
Yeah,
that's what
do you think maybe you can calm the fuck down during my close? Like I've been nice enough to let you do Spurg. Okay, so anyway, back before I was so fucking rudely interrupted by a fucking anarchist over here, let me try to put this in the best way I possibly can. Rob has not demonstrated there was anything actually which was intentionally illegal. Only things which were ruled as being process. They were illegal by process. Of an illegal action by process, that's it. But there's nothing wrong or unjustified if somebody's under suspicion of a crime with surveilling them. One of the ways that you do that is electronic. It's a much ado about nothing. Barr was never able to prove it. ever. He was in front of Congress, couldn't prove it. Said that all of this was going on. Never gave us the evidence that this was going on. And it was a complete nothing burger. Still is a complete nothing burger. And I'll close on this section there.
All right, I'll just take 20 seconds if you don't mind. We already had a proven illegal action that occurred, intent, which was Kevin Kleinsmith being arrested. The fact that they
You're a
did
bigot.
attempt to...
You're a fucking bigot.
What do you mean?
by the
It's
way.
my opinion that he was charged and found guilty of that crime?
Yeah, whatever, dude. Bigot.
Yeah, that's what I thought. OnlyFans Andrew here.
Bring me another drink so I can deal with this fucking.
I don't
you know what?
think
I
you
can't
should be
even. I
allowed
can't even
a
call you
hard
what you
seltzer?
are on YouTube.
Are you drinking? What are you drinking? A nice Merlot or something?
Just make
there?
your fucking clothes, Rob. Make your fucking clothes.
Interrupting like a good little Chad conservative there, huh? Yeah, and you can see the fact that they were talking about insurance policies. Look, none of this. Again, Andrew hasn't made one offensive argument for Biden. This is just making my arguments to show how corrupt these institutions are. They've been for years and years. Trump was considered a potential outsider, and that's the reason to vote for him again on these specific issues. If you want your voice to matter and not unelected bureaucrats, people in our cultural institutions, etc., then you need to ensure that people like the Biden administration don't maintain power. This is a crucial election because we can see that they're amping it up right now. They're going to start censoring people online more and more like me, not people like the lefties on the Crucible, which they'll no doubt promote with Brianna Wu and Progressive Victory PAC.
Okay, fine. I'm happy to move on to illegal immigration. And let's talk about how the wall not only didn't work, that Trump never put in a wall, but instead it ended up being a criminal conspiracy between Roger Stone and another guy who embezzled a ton of money using his military status as a veteran to do so, all signed off by the corrupt Trump administration. And on top of that, Trump was not effective at all on illegal immigration. His use claimed at the beginning when I said Biden has deported far more illegals than Trump ever thought of. I mean, it's significantly higher. You said, well, that's because he's opening it up so more can come in. Well, I'm sorry, Rob, that doesn't logically follow. There was still a large pool of illegals that Trump still could have deported, even if he wasn't letting more illegals in. That makes no fucking sense. It's an incoherent, logical position. Trump still could have deported just as many as Biden, even if I were to grant that Biden lets more in.
The ones that are being deported aren't people that have been here for years and years. There's a solid argument to be made that maybe Trump should have went outside the bounds of what Republican leadership was suggesting and tried to issue an executive order that would have no doubt been shut down by the courts to start deporting the millions upon millions of illegals that are already here. It's probably something he should have done, reason for criticism. However, the illegals that are being deported by Biden aren't those people either. They're being deported specifically from a pool of people that are coming across the border and don't meet the very loose criteria that is allowing those people to stay. The difference is Trump was trying to build a wall that Republican leadership and Democratic leadership were sabotaging, including calling it racist, to which they then want to build a wall now. And Trump actually did a good job of trying to advocate for getting that wall spent. The idea that Roger Stone
he advocated for it.
Are you gonna interrupt my opening? The idea that he's responsible for Roger Stone, I thought it was Steve Bannon that was involved in this sort of scheme with allegedly money.
I'm sorry, you're right. It was Steve Bannon, not Stone.
That's private people doing things. That's different than government money that Trump, he doesn't control the power of the purse. He was trying to get feckless Republicans.
He endorsed it, Rob.
He was trying to get feckless Republicans that are actually antithetical to the wishes of their own constituents to actually force through some sort of border spending, which they were unwilling to do, just like they were unwilling to do for decades before Trump, because they actually see utility in the open borders as well. So Trump was doing a better job. He was sabotaged by people like Biden. Biden ran on the promise. I'll finish. Biden basically ran on the promise of opening up the border, said that it shouldn't be illegal or a crime to try to come here illegally. And as a result, we've seen historic numbers of people that are coming. The idea that we should find some sort of solace in that he sent a small handful back, his percentage that he sent back that has come over the border significantly lower than the percentage Trump sent. And Trump was actually having policies like Remain in Mexico, which meant less people were coming anyways. The proof's in the pudding. You could buy the gaslighting and spin. We could see how many illegals are coming here under Biden. We could see that he's issuing policies trying to effectively give them amnesty. Right now, we can see that Chuck Schumer admitted that that's ultimately the goal, to try to give these people a path to citizenship. It is about replacing compliant and having a compliant population in this country and making the government the god amongst everything else, which would mean that Christianity, family values, etc. will be placed on the back burner for their global
Oh, that's
situation.
funny. How would having a bunch of Hispanic immigrants who are Catholic be an effective deterrent against Christian values, Rob?
because the theory is the Democrats are banking on is that they will continue to vote for Democrats which have secular policies because they'll be more concerned about remaining in the United States, and they're afraid that a politician from the other side that would say no, we have to have a secure border
doesn't really make a lot of sense, and let me explain
Certainly
why.
does.
Okay, so starting with this, by the second or third generation, these Hispanics are becoming more and more and more conservative. We see this all over the country. We see inside of the states which are Hispanic, now becoming Hispanic strongholds, are moving more and more red, not more and more blue. It's only the first generations. And the thing is why? Because they're bringing in those Catholic values. You make this kind of crazy ass claim. Well, this is antithetical to Christendom and Christian ethics. How could it be? If you are immigrating people from Christian nations who are Catholics, how would that be antithetical to Christian values? One. Two, you still haven't demonstrated why it is that Biden, who is massively deporting these people, I mean, en masse deporting them. Right now, you have a refugee crisis because of the drug wars and all sorts of other things which are going on south of the border. Okay, he's removing them as fast as he can, but he has refugees he has to deal with. So I don't know how you expect him to deal with this refugee crisis. What do you want him to do? Do you want him to razor wire the border with machine guns, Rob?
Yeah,
is that what you want him to do?
That'd be a great first
against
step.
refugees, Rob?
I don't think they should shoot them, but they should put a wall.
Is that Christian, Rob?
Yes, it's absolutely.
It is?
Yes.
It's Christian. It's Christian to take barbed wire, razor wire, and line your border with razor wire and machine guns for people who are fleeing a war zone.
Yes, it is a Christian.
Yes.
I'll explain. It is a Christian ethic to look out for the people that you're responsible for, your family unit first. The role of the government is basically an extension of that. The government exists solely at the pleasure and the service of the people that are citizens of this country. They do not have a moral obligation to look through the well-being of people outside it. Just like as
but
a
it's
father,
not antithetical to
please,
Christian
let me finish.
ethics.
Just like as a father, you should not harm your children because you feel you have a moral imperative to help your neighbor's kids. And so, yes, it is within Christian ethics to want to have a secure border.
Ethic.
That's not libertarian.
No,
in fact, many libertarians argue for open borders.
I just asked you. So what if many of them do? It doesn't mean they're arguing correctly, right? It doesn't mean they're actually arguing based on their moral prism. I asked you specifically. Here's the specific question. How is it antithetical to? Not why can you do it under Christian ethics? Why shouldn't you do it under Christian ethics? Why is it bad to do under Christian ethics?
Why is it bad to have open borders under Christian ethics?
No, why is it bad? Why is it bad to allow refugees to come in and process refugees from war zones, Rob? Why would that be bad?
Not necessarily would it be a bad thing. The problem is that it's being the problem is the way that it's being entailed. There's a lot of things that hypothetically could be good or bad. For example, it could be good or bad to help your neighbor. If it comes at the expense of helping your own family, then it's bad. If it doesn't and it actually helps your family to help your neighbor, then it would be a good thing.
Why would that be bad if it came at the expense of you and your family?
Because Christian ethics would be that you look out for yourself and your relationship first. As a father and as a husband, you should be protecting yourself.
No.
You should be protecting
Wait. No. There's all sorts of effects that happen inside of Christian communities which directly affect negatively people for the good of the greater community, Rob. What the hell are you talking about?
That's not a moral position. That is not a Christian position.
Yeah, why is it an unchristian position?
Because the idea of intentionally harming your family as a husband and father whose job it is through Christianity to protect your family, to intentionally harm your family to benefit other families is antithetical to what Christianity
Yeah, but this is okay, but no, I don't think so, because let's say, for instance, there was a food crisis in the United States.
You're a Christian, by the way?
But I can speak to Christian ethics. So let's say there was a food crisis. Are you?
Yes, a bad one.
A bad one. Okay, so
I believe Jesus is the Son of God.
So the point is, though, is that if you're discussing this, right, if you were to have, like, let's say a food crunch or something like this, why would it be antithetical to cycle food around to Christian ethics, knowing that that could mean less food for you and your family? That doesn't sound like an unethical position from Christianity.
If it causes harm to your family, it would.
That would be harm.
Yeah. No. Let me
How would that not be harm?
Let me throw you a bone a little. If the harm that was caused would be minimal, right? And so it's such a low level of harm that it doesn't do any sort of permanent harm, then perhaps you could make an argument for tightening your belt a little to help a neighbor. But what we're talking about is different than that.
But that's harm, Rob.
No,
that's harm, Rob.
what you've done is, right, you're taking a position and saying, isn't it true that sometimes helping your neighbor could be a good thing, which I've conceded that absolutely can't be the case. And you say, therefore, we need to take refugees, which is ignoring the specific situation as it's playing out right now, which is the vast bulk of these people aren't refugees, they're economic migrants. They're overwhelming our refugee system. And here's the problem. It is not
Why
me.
couldn't you be a...
It is not me that is immoral. It is the people like you that have openly advocated for these sort of open border policies, slapping in the face of the laws
There's
that we
no
put on.
open border policy.
Please, let me finish. Right?
Tell me the open border policy.
Okay.
Tell it to me.
Okay, I'll tell you. Here's the open border
I'll pull
policy.
it up right now. Go ahead.
Okay. Anyone who comes here with an asylum claim has to be processed and left within the United States.
That's not an open border policy, Rob.
Of course
no, it's not.
Of course
no,
it
it's
is.
not.
Yes.
No, they
Yes.
can. They're no. Are they?
It is.
Are they violating the law by not showing up to their hearing?
What does the law have to do with whether or not it's open border?
Well, that's not open borders then.
Of course it is. Anyone
No,
who
open
wants to
borders
get in
is you
can
cross
by
the
saying-
border with complete impunity or you don't.
That's not true.
That's open border. Yeah,
It's
it
not
is true.
Open border.
It is true.
Now, for someone who couldn't define the word spy, I think it's interesting that you want to argue semantics here. I would define open border as a border that could be crossed by anyone.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what we have.
Okay. No, we don't.
Yes.
Our border, the laws say you're not supposed to be able to cross by
But
anyone.
that's what the laws say, but that's not how in effect
So
it's
then we don't
practiced.
have an open border, Rob.
Of course we do. The semantic
No, you
argument,
don't.
of course we do.
This is not even rhetorically good from your angle. We do not have an open border. We are deporting en masse people who are here illegally. There are asylum seekers, but the United States policy has always been if there's asylum seekers that we process them and do something with them. They're coming in such numbers, asylm seekers. What can we do? Where do you want to put them,
Let me
Rob?
ask you a hypothetical. I know it's difficult for you lefties. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you about breakfast. So follow with me here for a second. Let's assume that there's a country that literally doesn't have a
I did have breakfast this morning.
Well, I knew. Let's assume there's a country that on purpose announces, we don't even have a border. We don't even have border guards, right? Okay? Following me? Anyone who walks across the border is allowed. But they do deport people. They say, no, we do think there are certain things you could do that we send you back. Is that country open border?
Repeat it. Let me make sure I get it right.
There's no guards, anything like that in the border. Anyone for any reason that wants to walk across can. But there are certain laws within the country that we say, hey, if we don't like what you do, we can send you out of the country. Is that open border?
No.
Why not?
Because you still have to obey the laws inside of the nation, which say you can't be there. And so if they come and collect you and remove you from their nation because you crossed the border illegally, how would that be open?
Because anyone who wants to cross may do so, and they're specifically acknowledging that they're not.
But they don't. They're stopped at the border constantly and turned away, Rob, all over the fucking United States. This is the case in all the southern states. They have border patrol everywhere. It's clearly not an open border.
I understand you ate breakfast. I understand.
I've been working triple overtime shifts. Getting these people, nailing them at the border, turning them back, or carting them back across. We see this day after day after day. It's not that we don't have border guards. That's insane. They're all over the fucking border, Rob.
And so what you can see is like the classic lefty. He can't engage in a hypothetical situation. He ate breakfast, and so as soon as he's pinned to the fact of how absurd
it still wouldn't be an open border under the hypothetical
border, he says, "But there are people at the border doing this."
Okay,
right? Gotcha.
Then let me ask you this. Let me ask you this in exchange, okay? If you're asking me this hypothetical, let's just say I grant it.
Okay.
You know what? If the border is wide open with zero guards whatsoever, nobody patrolling it ever, right? The entire border is this way. Let's just say I called that an open border. Okay. That's not our border, right?
What do you mean our border?
The United States border with Mexico?
The way things are not.
That is not our border with Mexico, is it?
Great. You're starting to understand
then even
what a
if I were to grant
is.
it, then who gives a shit?
The argument is, I'm trying to use a hypothetical to point out this absurdity of your semantic argument, right? And so your
hypothetical was absurd.
Your argument seemed to be what you were talking specifically, why I use this hypothetical, was the fact that people are deported proves that we can't be open borders. So I gave a hypothetical situation that forced you to admit, okay, I can see
No, it still wouldn't be open border. I literally said it still would not be an open border.
Uninterested in the semantic argument. We have a
I'm sure you are.
We have
because I answered direct to your hypothetical. Hang on, I just want to let you know what happened.
Okay,
I
go
answered
for it.
not only directly to your hypothetical,
You did
said
not.
no, it wouldn't be. Yeah, I did. I said no, it still wouldn't be. No, my exact word, no.
You have no
It still
reason
wouldn't
that
be.
it wouldn't be.
It still wouldn't be
Of course
an
it
open border because you would have to be in obeyance with the laws and be deported. So the answer would be no. But even if we were to grant this, even if we were to grant that it would be an open border, we clearly still don't have one, Rob. So how is that even a fucking argument?
You don't have an argument in a hypothetical why that wouldn't be an open border. The point that the hypothetical was
I
seeking
gave
to
you my
illustrate-
argument. You want me to
What's
give
the
you
argument again?
The argument is you would still be in obeyance with the laws, and the law's intent was that the border was not open, or there wouldn't be laws.
That's untrue, right? You could have
It's not
you could
untrue.
have any
It is
sort,
true.
You could have any sort of community that is quote open. You could have a house that's open, a town that's open, any sort of community, and there could be laws within that that say, but we'll kick you out if you do things that we don't like. Kicking someone out is not indicative as to whether or not
That's
it was
such a
open
smuggle.
in the first.
You
It's
smuggle.
not.
Okay, this
You're
is
the
the
person
worst
making
smuggle.
semantic
This is the
arguments.
worst smuggle I've ever seen. So he says,
It's the
if
point
the
of the
town says,
hypothetical.
if you come in and you do certain things, we'll kick you out. Okay, here's the certain thing they kick you out for: crossing the fucking border. That's the
true.
thing you get kicked out for.
That's not true
Yes,
at all.
it is true.
That's not true.
If you illegally cross the border, you're supposed to be removed and taken back to your country of origin. It's called deportation. Biden does tons and tons of it. The guards are picking them up at the border every single day by tens of thousands. And this is what's actually happening.
see if I
What you
got the-
did in your hypothetical was you smuggled this in. You said, oh, so it's an open border because the laws say you can cross the border, but when you get here, if you violate XYZ law, then we'll deport you. Okay, you already violated the XYZ law, which is you're not allowed to cross the border. That's why it's not open, Rob.
That's not true. The people aren't being kicked out. It's purely because they cross the border. If that's the case, then why isn't everyone that illegally crosses the border sent back?
Because there's so many of them, you can't round them all up in a
That's
fucking
not
day or a
true.
week or a month or a year.
So your argument is that the Biden administration's diligently attempting to round up the hundreds of thousands of people that come a month that are coming illegally, right? They're trying to do
They're
that.
exporting far more of them than Trump
That's-
ever did.
That's not true. What's happening
It is true.
Let's see if I could use these terms correctly. I might screw this up. I shouldn't even use the terms. But we have de jure and de facto. We have de facto open borders, even though the laws say that there are certain laws that need to be applied. The fact is because the United States government is funding NGOs that are telling millions of illegal immigrants the things they need to say to get access to cross the border.
Well,
and
that's
then
really
remain
weird.
Here.
The government's funding what?
NGOs,
You mean non-government organizations?
correct?
Okay, and which non-government organizations are they funding?
There's a litany of them.
Which one? Name one.
Andrew's mom for open Hispanics.
A good one, Rob.
Yeah,
Name
I
one of
tried.
these NGOs that's actually putting in policies to say, "Oh, we're going to fund you coming in. We're going to do whatever you want. Just give me one. Don't Google it, fucker. Give me
I'm
one."
not Googling, and I'll be straight up. I have a list of the NGOs that I've written about before on my home computer. I don't have it in front of me, but I'm not going to bullshit you and claim that I have the names specifically in the top. It's irrelevant as to whether or not they exist. Is it your argument that you're trying to make because I can't name a specific name that there are no NGOs
It
that are
seems
instructing
very
people?
central. It seems very central to your argument that there's NGO think tanks which are somehow subverting fucking border policy. It's
true.
But you can't name a single one.
Right. I
That's
don't
pretty
have to-
convenient, Rob. That's pretty convenient.
So your argument is
Is that part of
because-
the shadow government, Mr. Tinfoil Hat?
Yeah,
Is that part of the swamp?
In effect, it is part of the swamp. This is something that occurs all the time. The United States State Department intelligence agencies fund NGOs to do policies that our government's legally not allowed to do. This is how color revolutions occur around the world. This is how the policies that you're talking about that are leading to immigrants coming here occur so often. There are NGOs that go down that are financed by the United States government
That you
tell
can't
these
name.
people. That's true. I don't have their specific name in front of me. That tell these people specifically what they need to say to make an amnesty claim. Once that amnesty claim is made, then it's in effect an open border, and they're allowed to come in. That's why we see the hundreds of thousands of people here, and that's why you hear Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden.
And what is
talking
your
about
proof that
policies
the
lead to
government, that the federal government is funding these non-government organizations? What's your evidence of this?
the budgets that show it?
What budgets that show that they're funding which NGOs which are doing this,
I don't
Rob?
have the specifics in front of me.
Yeah, of
what
course
the
you don't.
specifics are.
Of course you don't.
But
Came to a debate completely unprepared to
That's
talk about a pivotal point of immigration. Good job, Rob.
it's not a pivotal point. It is a point that
Immigration
is
is not a
inevitably
pivotal
true.
point.
No,
That was
immigration's
literally
a-
one of the biggest points of the Trump administration was that they were
Can
going to
you-
stop illegal immigration.
No, immigration's certainly a big issue. This specific point about these NGOs and needing to know their specific names is not a pivotal point. No. Again, let's just ask you. Let's just ask you.
The funders do what?
Do you acknowledge that illegal immigration's a problem? It seems to be that's the stance you're taking.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Is it worse under Biden or Trump?
It was worse under Trump.
That's a lie. The numbers
It's not
just
a lie.
prove that you're wrong.
It's not a lie. Not only that, not only was it worse under Trump, he did less to remove them.
What metric are you
He
using?
also promised us a wall, which he did not deliver on.
What metric? Okay, you just said illegal immigration's a problem. You say it's worse under Trump. What metric are you using?
I'm using the metric of deportation.
Okay, so what's a problem about illegal immigration? Why do you call it a problem?
Well, because I think that it doesn't comply with the spirit of the law of being, waiting your turn in line to become a citizen of the United States.
Okay, so that's a bullshit answer. The real problem
How is that a bullshit answer?
Because it's just
is that not a problem?
It's a problem, but it's certainly nowhere near the top of why it's a problem.
I would say that most people you asked, if you said, why is illegal immigration a problem? They would say, because legal immigrants who have waited for years in line to become a member of the United States, they get jumped over by illegals coming in, taking their spot. I would say that that's the number one moral argument you can make, Rob.
The moral argument, right, would be irrelevant to why it's a significant problem in this country. It's a significant.
I don't think so.
I disagree. I think that the big problem is the overwhelming nature of the mass amount of illegal immigration we have. But even if we accept your argument, okay, so then the people skipping line, are there more people skipping line under Biden or Trump?
It is true that there has been a greater influx of illegals moving in to take advantage of the United States. However, let me give you a quick counter here to this. We don't actually know how widespread the illegal immigration was during the lockdowns because tons and tons were coming in to take advantage of the Trump administration, literally giving these packages, these incentive packages, monetary packages to people who came in and claimed they were citizens. Very little checks done on this, by the way. Almost everybody who applied for COVID relief got it, including tons and tons and tons of illegals. He offered us essentially an incentive, and we have no idea because of the lockdowns. Governments were locked down, Border Patrol's locked, almost everybody is, okay? You only had core infrastructure that was out there. They were literally laying people off in the Border Patrol agencies because they were afraid of getting infected. We don't actually know what the numbers were. It could be that under the Trump administration during the lockdowns, more came over here to take advantage of that than you think. We don't know for sure. We see this influx now. That's true, but there's a variety of reasons why that's going on. And Biden's certainly shipping them the fuck out as fast as he can to a way higher tune than Trump ever was.
Okay, first off, you have no evidence whatsoever that we can't trust to a large degree the immigration numbers during COVID, but we can trust them at other times. That's absurd.
I can logically demonstrate it.
You have no evidence of it whatsoever.
I can logically demonstrate it.
You could claim to have logically demonstrated it, but
if you and I agree with the logical demonstration, then I've demonstrated it.
Okay, part of your logical demonstration would be that there were less Border Patrol people working because of COVID restrictions, correct?
Overall, far less government working, period.
What's that have anything to do?
I'm going to explain it to you. This means less drones. This means less ways for you to catalog these things.
Prove it.
This means it would logically follow that if you have less manpower due to COVID, that you would be able to catalog these things correctly less.
You're making an assertion, which is during the lockdown.
Does that not logically follow to you?
No, because the problem is, I'm explaining, because it's based on an assertion you're making that there were less government employees in these sectors, particularly border secure, ICE agents.
There was, for sure there was. I can give you the number. Yeah, that I can do.
Good.
On the retraction, I'll pull it up for you. One second here.
Also, I'd like you to find the numbers. What was the percentage of the people that came across?
Hang on, one thing at a time, Mr. King Gish Galloper. You think we can do one thing at a time?
While you were on your Google machine there.
You asked me to Google it.
You're the one who made this pivotal point. I assumed you would have it in front of you. You asked me not to Google an NGO's
I didn't.
name.
It was your point I was responding to. You said, go ahead and Google it and show it.
No, you.
We've got about 2 minutes left. Let's try to wrap this up, please.
Okay, well, just very quickly, this was part of the U.S. Border Patrol Customs COVID-19 relief on imports exports. They talk about retracting up to 1/3 of the total of Border Patrol agents in administration. Now, I guess, Rob, I can grant for the sake of argument just for the sake of argument, even that somehow they were able to keep the finest record keeping, even while retracting 1/3 of the totality of their workforce. But don't you think that that's a fucking stretch, dude?
No.
No?
You were probably the same guy saying when Elon Musk fired like 80% of Twitter that it was going to collapse too, and then it ran swimmingly.
Oh, okay, Rob. Well, did you want less or more Border Patrol agents?
Did yours?
Do you want less or more Border Patrol agents?
It is. I would want more. However,
You would want more. Why?
Well, let me finish. Right?
Yeah, you finish.
Right.
Go ahead.
I would want more. However, if I had to choose between more funding to them and more agents that were continually hamstrung, like the Biden administration is doing to them, or less that were allowed to actually do their job, I would choose less. Right? And didn't the stat you read said Border Patrol
Under the Trump
administrators?
administration, you think that less of them are doing their job?
I think that they were allowed to do their job better and keep people on the Mexican side.
And if they had more staffing, they would do the job even more better
It's not
than
true.
that,
So
right, Rob?
the people that are experts, such as the Border Patrol Union, talks continuously about how Biden is intentionally sabotaging them and tying their hands, even to the point where Biden's administration, remember when he promoted the hoax of the Border Patrol agent on the horse that was lassoing
This
the
is just a
noble
diatribe. It's not answering to my query.
I gave specific
This is not answering to my
relevant
query. Listen, here's
testimony
the query.
from the
Here's the
actual
query.
workers that said
Yeah.
that they're being hamstrung by Biden in ways that Trump
This is
didn't.
the most bad-faced shit ever. Answer to the query. If you would want more Border Patrol rather than less Border Patrol underneath Trump, it's because you think that having more Border Patrol agents out there makes it far more effective in cataloging, finding them, deporting them, knowing where they are, knowing where they aren't. That's why you would want more. That's why we all know that that's exactly why you would want more. And yet in this, when I say, okay, they retracted it, but they have perfect cataloging still, you're like, yes. What the fuck are you talking about?
I didn't say they had perfect. By the way,
Well, then, Rob,
I didn't say they had
there's a
perfect.
good example here that there could be far more illegals who came in under Trump than is ever reported due to the fact that we had these lockdowns. And I did just logically demonstrate that
It's
to you,
not
right?
true at all. Did not what you read say that there were less Border Patrol administrators by a third?
Yes, that's
Did it
true.
say Border
but
Patrol agents?
it wasn't clear what the admixture was. But for sure, there was less Border Patrol agents. But, Rob, Border Patrol agents are going to act in an administrative fashion as well. When you say I want more border security, that's going to include administrators. Yes,
So
it is.
Yes,
it is, Rob. How do you
Administrators
process
are
without administration?
Right. The administrators are bean counters. There is no evidence. I'll look for you to provide evidence that suggests that the actual people that were there when people were crossing the border, or in the case of Remain in Mexico, that came as a result of the lockdowns where we were keeping more people on that side of the border, that somehow that they weren't adequately doing their job, even though there doesn't seem to be any evidence you suggested that there were less of those people. Again, this is all just stretching and gaslighting. It's easy for anyone to
They
see
had an
that
incentive to come here, Rob. They had are you saying they had no incentive to come here
No,
when you're
there's-
handing out these COVID relief packages to the tunes of tens of thousands of dollars to people to stay at home and sit on their asses? And those were going to illegals. We know that they were going to illegals. We know tons of those packages went to illegals. How the fuck could you say there was no incentive for them to come and that you had the same administrative
Who's saying
power
that?
to track them?
Who's
How could you
saying
ever
that?
say that?
Who's saying
Well,
that?
then
Two
I'm
things.
logically demonstrating
You're
to
not.
you that,
You're not.
of course, the chances that
doing-
if there's an incentive, they came in and we couldn't track it, Rob.
What you're doing is, right, you're talking about things that are fundamentally true. Yes, there is an incentive. That incentive is non-unique. The incentive to come to the United States from these sort of people has existed always. It may fluctuate up and down, but that incentive's always
That's
existed.
a little bit more incentive,
The
dude.
idea that you say, oh, because there was money being handed out in this unique situation, maybe even though we have no evidence of it, that millions flooded that we're just unaware of, which is bullshit. And then furthermore, right, to further prove this, what would be a bigger incentive? Donald Trump, who was telling these illegals, you have to remain in Mexico, we're not going to accept you, and his Border Patrol agents and Border Patrol Union said that he was attempting that and giving them free reign to do that, or the Biden administration, which ran on the promise of allowing all of these people in, to the tune that the Border Patrol agents say that we're being intentionally hamstrung, and when they interview illegal immigrants, continuously say, the reason we're here is because Biden and the Democrats told us we could come.
They
What
said
you
under
can't
Trump
get
they were
around-
still
what you
intentionally
can't get
hamstrung,
around-
Rob.
I love this about Democrats. I love this, right? The numbers are always to be trusted. Trust the science, trust the government until the numbers go in a direction you don't
That's
like.
a straw man.
It's not true. The
It is.
objective
It is.
reality.
It's a straw man.
the
I gave you an objective,
reality,
logical argument you have not refuted.
You've given no evidence for it. You've talking about a potential
you evidence
hypothetical
for
that
it.
you haven't. You've talked about a potential hypothetical that you're trying to build a logic tree about, that there are so many holes in it's laughable. And you're saying because it is potential.
Sure, yeah.
Right, for example, if there was an incentive, people could have came, right? Theoretically, that could happen. If some administrators went down, couldn't that mean that they didn't have an accurate count of the numbers? Yes, but I don't understand if there were just as many border. But it could mean that. So therefore, we should ignore all the numbers that show that we have an immigration crisis unlike this country has ever seen.
Oh, I'm sorry, Rob. You got caught in a logical demonstration, which you completely and totally fucking agreed with, and now you're backtracking, going, "Oh, there's tons of holes in it," even though I could never point one out.
I just did.
Point one out.
Okay. You have no evidence whatsoever that says less administrators would mean that there wouldn't be, it would be a wildly inaccurate count.
Okay, Rob, does it stand to reason that the reason that you want more Border Patrol agents at the border, which would include administrators, is because you think that they could more easily track, find, and deport illegal immigrants, Rob?
I would say that if given the proper circumstances.
Yes or no, Rob?
I would say yes. If they're allowed to
then
do
I
their
logically
job.
demonstrated it to you.
That's not true.
It is true.
You have not, I don't think, in fact, I'll go so far as to say this. I'll bet. Would you acknowledge that it seems that with our federal government that there's been a massive exponential increase in administrators compared to on-the-ground jobs? Yes or no? Yes or no?
On the department.
Yes or no? Okay, so name me a department that you don't think that there's been an exponential increase in administrators. Go ahead.
The Border Patrol.
That's not true.
No?
No, that's certainly not true.
Biden's doing what you want and increasing the amount of Border Patrol to deport people? Great, Rob. Another logical demonstration for Andrew was right. Another logical demonstration for Andrew was right.
You're truly living in an alternate reality. I'll finish this point real quick, Sparky. No, what I'm saying is it is absolutely true that the percentage of on-the-ground workers to administrators in the Border Patrol, just like almost every other institution of government in this country, has massively increased. That there are way more administrators now than there were percentage-wise 30 years ago. And so, yes, I think that we probably could cut back on some of the administrators. However, we probably should have more actual on-the-ground ICE agents. The bigger problem is allowing these ICE agents and Border Patrol, allowing ICE agents and Border Patrol to actually do their job. That's the bigger problem. We could have
track.
That is
how are you going to process? If you have more Border Patrol agents who are collecting more of these illegal immigrants, they have to be processed, Rob. If you're going to process them, you're going to need more administrators, and you're going to need more sergeants, and you're going to need more desk jockeys in order to route them, and you're going to need more people flying fucking drones to spot them, and then you're going to need more paperwork tracking. It is fucking true.
That's not true.
Hold on. You can respond in your closing statements. We've already gone 3 minutes over.
All right.
Made sure Andrew got the last word there. Rob, you will start off with closing statements. You'll have 7 minutes, and we will allow Andrew, since he is the challenger, to finish the debate with his closing statement.
Okay, so I will say that Andrew does a convincing facsimile of a Democrat here, because what it constantly is ignore the objective reality. The guy probably couldn't define to you what a woman is. He'll be telling you that, all of a sudden that things like, age of consent and all that, we don't know about any of that. And, anyone could marry anyone, et cetera, et cetera. Thank God we didn't get into an incest conversation, which I know he is like to do. So what he wants you to do is ignore the objective reality that we see in all of these things. I will say, I give him credit for trying to gaslight an audience, but step back and ask yourself this. This dude had total control to talk about the topics he wanted that was going to prove that Biden was better than Trump. He has not outlined one offensive position, right? Everything that he talked about was, well, it's not as bad as some may think, right? Like the FBI spying on Trump and all of that stuff. What was the point of that? Those people that are running the Biden administration that are part and parcel to him because he's just a dementia-addled old man, he's like, well, it wasn't quite as bad as you would think. They didn't spy directly on Trump. How does that give me incentive to vote for Biden over Trump? Or when we started talking about the border, all he could say is, well, maybe for all we know, the numbers, we shouldn't trust them because they were way worse under Trump. We just didn't know about it. We just didn't know. It's laughable. Everyone can see this sort of, trick that he's trying to employ to gaslight you, but the numbers are there. It's evident what's going on. And it makes sense also anecdotally when you see that Biden provided the incentive where he told them to all come here, which is exactly what happened. That's what the Democrat, remember, no Democrat in that debate stage in 2020 raised their hand when they said, should it be a crime to cross the border illegally? They all said no. They talked about all the benefits that they were going to give illegal schooling, healthcare benefits, etc., and about the moral imperative to do so. And it makes sense when we talk to the Border Patrol, they say how bad Biden's been. And it makes sense when we talk to the illegals, they talk about we're here because Biden and the Democrats said we could be here. So we see on that realm of things how bad things were. We didn't talk about the economy much there, but I understand why, because it's another indefensible position, which would have just resulted in Andrew doing the same thing that Democrats always do, to tell you to not look at the actual numbers, forget about the fact that you're actually paying 50 to 80% more for a bunch of staples that you need, but trust us, because the strategic reserve's been lowered a little, things are going okay. Foreign policy-wise, what's the argument? What argument did he make that Biden's doing a good job? He spent all this time hemming and hawing about the petrodollar and things like that. It's indisputable. Take a step back and ask yourself these questions. Is the country better off now than it was in 2019? It's not even close. Foreign policy, things are a disaster. We have war that's coming on so many fronts. With Trump, we had no new wars. It wasn't perfect, but we had no new wars that were declared. We had historic Middle East peace deals. With Biden, we have conflict in the Middle East that we haven't seen for decades. We have Russia invading Ukraine. We have Russian warships off the coast of the United States. We have BRICS nations that are coming together. We have Saudi Arabia getting off the petrodollar. We have China aggressing. All of these things are occurring. None of this happened under Trump. But we're told, forget all that. Forget all that. Joe Biden's a true statesman. He's doing a great job. He's doing great. What position did Andrew argue on foreign policy that makes you trust Biden and ignore all this evidence that we see as opposed to Donald Trump? Then when it came to sort of Trump's fecklessness, okay, sure, Trump didn't drain the swamp as well as he did. He has no good answer for Biden is literally a representative of the swamp. If we're conceding that the swamp is bad, would I take a guy that might fail in trying to fight them or a guy that is actively promoting them? Clearly, I'm going to take the guy that might fail. And Andrew basically says, when you really pry into it, it's a good thing. It's a good thing that the generals didn't listen to him. It's a good thing that these unelected bureaucrats made these decisions. And make no mistake about it, these unelected bureaucrats don't give a shit about you. They care about maintaining their own power. And that's also why they want things like open borders. In the beginning, he talked about the morality of Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. Again, he had nothing to say about the actual policies. If we're accepting that we want sort of Christian ethics to be promoted in this country, he has nothing to say other than Trump slept with a porn star and ignore all the things that Biden did because I don't really believe them. And yet, he ignores the fact the active promotion from the Biden administration from all of these secular policies, including abortions on demand, including locking up people that are protesting abortions, including the sexuality of children, including DEI initiatives. We didn't even talk about things like the FBI intentionally burying the manifesto of a trans shooter. These sorts of things are occurring routinely and are accelerating. There is cultural momentum pushing back on this stuff, but if we allow Biden to entrench himself, and more importantly, he's a vegetable, but the administration behind him, they will make your voice less and less important and entrench themselves. They'll do things like pack the Supreme Court, advocate for more censorship. That means that people like me and the old Andrew Wilson will be unable to have channels where we can actually talk about how corrupt these things are, how dangerous they are. So the best chance we have going forward is clearly a Donald Trump presidency. I'm non-impressed with Andrew and his defense. I know it's a difficult task to try to defend Joe Biden, but I don't even think strategically he comes in with a good game plan. He just starts to muddy the waters and say, there's a lot of Trump's bad, there's a lot of stuff, but he's not giving you a comparison why Biden would be preferable to Trump. I've given that in the opening statements, and if I was allowed to choose the topics, I would have chose strategically. First thing I would have talked about was immigration. Second thing I would have talked about was the economy. Third thing I would have talked about was foreign policy. Instead, Andrew comes in, doesn't really have a plan about this, and just says, I'm going to talk about logic, logic trees and all of this stuff. None of it made sense. He does a great job of articulating what an average Democrat is, but it is clear that he is unable to define the specifics of the reality on the ground. I know what a man is. I know what a woman is. I'm sorry that Andrew no longer does, but I believe in objective reality. I believe in sort of these Christian ethics. I believe that the American people deserve to have a government that represents them and their values. And Andrew believes in a fake reality where Joe Biden's a really sharp guy that doesn't sniff little girls, and it's a great thing.
All righty. Thank you for that. And Andrew Wilson,
Thank you
It
for that
is,
overly
your turn.
long-winded closing statement where you said literally nothing. Just tried to, as you accused me of, typical Republican fashion, obfuscation, brought up topics we didn't even get to, as though I ever got a chance to even respond to them. Good job there. That's some great logic, Rob. So let's go through this real quick. All the things that Rob criticizes me on the foreign policy and petrodollar was not in my opening statement. That was Rob. It was in Rob's opening statement. So of course we went over to it. Gave you no policies at all that Biden had, which led to Saudi Arabia shrugging off the petrodollar. None. Not one. Not a single one. Moving on from there, when we move off of the petrodollar, we move into Russian warships, right? He brings this up in his opening statement. Guess who didn't? This guy. I didn't. Rob did. He led the conversation. I let him, and it was so easy to do this. So we get into, these warships that are off you can see them from Florida. Oh, no. Well, Rob, do you think World War III is going to happen? No. Rob, do you think that this is really going to be a crisis? No. Hey, Rob, should people start buying bunkers and hoarding food because of this? No. Right? It's literally grandstanding. It's meaningless. It means nothing. We get into the FISA warrants. We get into Carter Page. We get into this. All he could do is say, well, they surveilled somebody who they suspected was a criminal, really provided no evidence. The Barr never was able to provide any of the evidence. Neither was the Trump administration. Totally moot. But remember, we started this off under the ethical understanding that Trump is just as unethical as Biden, right? From a moral standpoint, he's just as bad. He's out humping hookers. He's paying hush money. Right. And all Rob could say is, oh, well, a chick who never actually came forward with an allegation wrote it in her diary once. Oh, great job. Great job. You really got me there, Rob. Then moving on from there, when we get into immigration, that was fucking hilarious. Rob wants to have additional border security, even though he feels that the administration of having more border security is actually going to be ineffective and bog the system down. That makes a lot of fucking sense, doesn't it? And then when pressed on it, when I say, wait a second, don't you want to increase these things so that you can catch more of these guys? Yes. Well, you can't have it both ways. So he enters into a complete and total logical conundrum. He doesn't know how to sidestep it at that point. He has no idea how to backtrack it. Completely failed to make an immigration argument. It was a total fail across the board. When you get into the immigration, let me give you again, real quick, where we ended up with here. My position was under the lockdowns, the likelihood that if you're offering incentive packages to illegal immigrants by paying them to stay at home, which Rob concedes, yes, many of them did get that. He conceded that that was true. This offers an incentive coming in, and you retract the Border Patrol, then that means that you're going to have a lot more illegals come in than probably are accounted for. Rob says, no, that's not true, even though he knows that that's true. And then it goes on to say, when I ask him, wouldn't you prefer to have more Border Patrol? He says yes, because then they could do more of these things to get them out of our nation, including tracking them, right? Which, if you were to reduce it by 1/3 during lockdowns, how the fuck could you track them? Makes no sense at all, right? Total and complete. I mean, I don't know what happened with Rob and logic. I'm going to send him a book called How the Fuck to Logic. And, I'm going to overnight it to him because, man, what an abysmal failure across the board. Again, very typical of these kind of Republican degenerates, right? And then listen to what he says, too. Well, I'm Christian adjacent. What the fuck does that mean? I'm Christian adjacent. Well, then Biden's more Christian than Rob is, because at least he claims he's a Catholic. He doesn't claim Christian adjacent, right? Whatever the fuck that means. Now, Rob's going to say, you're straw manning me. I said Christ was my Lord and Savior. Kind of on the fence about it. Yes, this is Lord and Savior, but maybe there's some other things going on in here when it comes to Christian ethics. If maybe you have to tighten your belt so you don't get as much food, that's okay. But putting razor wire machine guns on the border, that's exactly what a Christian would do. This shit makes no sense, right? None of Rob's arguments made any sense, but I'm going to close with this. This debate showed me something extremely important, which is that there's plenty of places where I can shore up my argumentation. And there's also plenty of places that Rob Noerr, who I'm ashamed to call my friend because of his deceitful and disgusting Republican ways, can also shore up. And as they say, gentlemen, iron sharpens iron. Appreciate that very much. And then with that, we can get into the call-in section, Aircraft Sparky. But before we do, when you're always at peak viewership, I always do this. Aircraft Sparky and Rob Noerr, why don't you take a moment to shout your channels out before we get to the callers?
Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, Normal America with Rob Noerr on YouTube. That's my preferred platform at this point. Also, Rob Noerr on Rumble, Twitch, X, exactly as it's spelled there. I try to put a video up, usually a clip from one of my live streams, around noon on YouTube every day, and try to live stream Wednesday, Thursday, Friday nights around 8 p.m. Eastern.
I'm Aircraft Sparky. You can find me on YouTube, Rumble, and Twitch. I'm only on Twitch on Wednesday nights. I do a Monday night and a Wednesday night show at 9 p.m. Central. That's 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for all you people over there on the coastal areas. I live in the Midwest. I'm just a pundit. I go through news. I make commentary. I appreciate the Crucible for allowing me to be the moderator tonight, and I appreciate the people on the panel, the debaters tonight, Andrew Wilson, and of course Rob Noerr, for a very spirited debate. The debate is now officially over.